All right, guys, Mike here with EBR, and Velotric has released quite a few bikes over the last few years, and they've become one of the go-to brands for trustworthiness and just putting together bikes that people really like. Now, what they hadn't done up until today is make an electric trike, but obviously that's now changed. Meet the Velotric Triker. Now, in true fashion of Velotric, they went pretty above and beyond with some of the biggest numbers I've seen yet and features I've seen on electric trike. Let's get into all those big numbers, all those features, and a couple party tricks that this trike has and see if it's worth your time in our deep dive today in this review of the Velotric Triker. Alright guys, so the Velotric Triker, let's go over some quick overview numbers. This is a Class 1-2 e-bike priced at $23.99. Now I say Class 2 because this tops out in speed at 20 miles an hour. Most trikes top out at 14, 15, or 16 miles an hour because of the tipping hazard, but this one goes all the way out to 20. And I think that's for good reason, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now this is UL certified and ISO certified, so you have UL 2849 on the bike's electrical system, you have UL 2271 on the battery, and then you have UL 2850 on the battery cells. So in addition to all that UL testing, they also got it durability tested from ISO. They have the ISO 4210 durability standard testing on this e-trike as well. So they've invested a lot and put some thoughtful engineering into a bike that's not only going to perform well and look good and have some great specs, but it's also going to be safe and meet those third-party safety standards. Now, when it comes to things like the weight, they say this trike weighs 85 pounds. But of course, I threw this up on the scale when I got it, and I got a big number. I got 98 pounds, which is about a 13-pound difference. And you might be wondering, well, why would that be? And I have a theory, and I think that is because Velotric says the weight of the trike without extra accessories like this rear rack and bag, and the battery. So the battery weighs about 11 pounds or almost 11 pounds. So if you took the battery off of my 98-pound result, that would already take us down to about 87 pounds while they're advertising 85. And then, of course, the rear rack, that would probably knock off another 2 pounds and put us around 85 pounds, which is where I think they got that number from. But I just wanted you to know the actual number when it's fully kitted out so you're not left with any surprises should you go ahead and buy this. Now, in terms of frame sizes and colors, this is a one-size-fits-most from 410 on the low end all the way up to 6'5", so a really wide fit range, and we'll talk about how that works in a little bit. And then in terms of colors, this is the crimson red, but they also have a pearl white and an electric blue. Now, all three of those colors have really nice paint jobs. Velotric has always done a good job of making paint jobs that kind of look like new car paint. They have a nice, deep, glossy finish at the top of clear coat, and then they have a nice metallic flake or kind of a glittery glossy finish. They just look really, really nice, and I think they kind of rival like a new car paint job. Now, when it comes to some geometry numbers on this frame, so the wheelbase from the rear hub here to the front hub, or vice versa, that's going to be 43 inches. Our reach up top is 13.7 inches, so it's nice and close and comfortable, so for nice relaxed riding, but it's got an adjustable stem, so you can push that out or bring it further back depending on what you find comfortable. And then the seat post here has a whopping 15 inches of range. Now, that's a huge amount of range. So people that are up to where that's 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", at the top end of the range fit, plus the reach adjustment with the stem, you can really find something that works for anybody, whether you are that 410 or up on that 6'5", which I think those are some smart features to add when you have a wide range like that, because fit can be the biggest problem when you have a one-size-fits-most. Having these adjustable stem and handlebars and 15 inches in the seat post really helps make it a good fit for most people. Now, in terms of things like the standover height, this is a pretty low standover height at 14.5 inches, so getting off and on is a lot more easy and stable. You don't have to worry so much about balancing like you would on a traditional bike, especially with a trike. And then the max payload on this is 500 pounds, one of the highest I've seen in electric trikes, and actually in electric e-bikes in general. 500-pound payload is a really solid, big payload that allows just a lot of options, whether you're a heavier rider or you're a rider who's not very heavy, but you have a lot of extra gear or pets or grandkids you want to take with you. That's when things like this really start to shine. Now, in terms of the wheel and tire setup, we have a 20-inch alloy wheel, and it's wrapped in a 20 by 3-inch wide Kenda K-Rad tire with a nice kind of aggressive commuter tread pattern, not quite all-terrain tire, but not quite commuter slicks. It's a nice kind of middle ground between the two, more of an all-season type tire. Now, this comes with a rear rack here, as you can see right behind me, and it's a pretty good size, and it's pretty deep here, about 6 inches deep. But on top of that, it also can hold 120 pounds out of that 500-pound payload, so you can put quite a bit of weight in the back here. Now, it also comes with front-to-back lighting, both a 400 lumen headlight, a nice big moto-style headlight with a bright 400 lumen beam, and then you have a taillight that has a braking highlight feature, so when you apply the brakes, that taillight will glow lighter, just like your car does. And then they actually mounted on the frame 2 additional turn signals, so you have left and right turn signals on the backside to let cars know behind you or people know behind you when you plan on making that turn. Just more visibility, more safety, smarter overall ride at the end result. Now, in terms of adding your own extra gear, we also have 2 mounting points right here and on the down tube and seat tube for mounting water bottle cages or tool kits, whatever you want to apply to those 2 mounting points. And then, of course, front to back fenders. They are metal fenders over all 3 wheels. So it really is pretty aggressively set to go from day one, whatever your kind of goal is or whatever your ride is for the day. It's pretty well equipped to handle just about anything. All right, so let's talk about the muscle behind the Velotric Triker, because that's another area this bike has a couple party tricks. Now, first things first, I just want to point out the placement of both of them. If you look at where your rider body weight is going to be right here on the seat, right over kind of this mid space between the seat tube and the tires, that's exactly where they've also mounted the battery and the rear hub motor. Now, the reason why I think that's important is because it's keeping all of the center of gravity in the same central position and low to the frame of the trike. And trikes by nature, 3-wheel designs, have a more of a tipping hazard. So when you bring that center of gravity lower, plus you have smaller 20-inch wheels that keep your hub height lower and the overall frame lower, it just helps aid to a more stable ride. And on a trike, that's a pretty big deal. So let's start with the motor. Back here, right in front of the rear axle, is mounted a 750-watt hub-style motor. Now, this motor can peak at 1,300 watts, and it's quite powerful. It's got 90 newton meters of torque. I was very surprised when I hit the accelerator on this, when you use the throttle or PAS5. It's a punchy, quick trike. It doesn't ride like a trike. It rides like a quick trike, which is really cool for people who want speed and don't want kind of a slower trike. Just keep in mind the turning. We talked about at speed. When you have a trike that can tip, that's where that 20 miles an hour in turning would probably not be a good idea. But think about having extra power on tap. So we may never go over 15 miles an hour, but you load it up with cargo, kids, you have extra weight on it. It's going to naturally be more sluggish. But now that you have that extra peaking power that could go up to 20 miles an hour on an unloaded bike, that's just going to make it more stable, more capable, and more powerful when you're carrying a load, which I think was a pretty smart idea. I don't think going full blast with an unloaded bike at 20 miles an hour around corners is a good idea, but having that extra power, staying in the teens, and having that extra power that takes this bike up to 20, really smart move. Now, this has some interesting riding modes as well. It's got beginner mode, which goes from 0 to 8 miles an hour. Now, that's going to be perfect for someone who hasn't been on a bike in a long time. Maybe they're teaching a friend or a grandkid or someone who just wants to check it out. They want to try it, but they don't want to get that full power I talked about because it is pretty punchy. You can put it in beginner mode, and that's going to max out the speed at 8 miles an hour and let you just take your time, learn what's going on, learn how the throttle feels, learn about the weight distribution and the balancing factor that goes with a trike as far as your body mass when you go around corners. That's when a beginner mode makes a whole lot of sense. Now, when you're done with beginner mode and you want to crank it up a little bit, you don't have to jump all the way to 20 mile an hour max. You can go to standard mode, and then you can set the range anywhere between 12 miles an hour and 20 miles an hour. So now you can just start eking up in speed, or you can go all the way if you're fully comfortable from day one. Totally up to you, but it's just nice to see those features. Now, on top of that, most brands send you a bike and you have to pick when you buy one, either a cadence sensor style e-bike or a torque sensor style e-bike. Now, a cadence sensor is going to be more immediate, all power, kind of on demand, and a torque sensor is going to take your feedback from your pedaling and say, how hard are they pedaling? How fast are they pedaling? Okay, they want more speed, we'll give them more. They want less, we'll give them less. Torque sensors are more dynamic, cadence sensors are more all or nothing. But what's cool about this is you don't have to pick, it ships with both of them in it, and you can select between cadence sensor or torque sensor at any point during the ride, and it only takes a few seconds. That way you can play with both, you can use both independently, or you can just leave it on one that you like more forever and be done. But just having that flexibility so you can figure it out was a really smart move as well. Now, when it comes to the battery, this is a 48-volt battery. It's externally mounted on the seat tube here. It does come with a set of keys, so you can remove it for off-the-bike charging or security. This battery has 16.6 amp hours, giving us 804 watt hours of juice to work with. Now, this also has a 2-year warranty along with the rest of the bike. And in terms of range, they say this can get up to 60 miles. Now, I did one range test on this, but I did it in kind of a torture test style. I did one full blast test at PAS 5 with that max speed at 20 miles an hour. Now, I will say it's a fairly ideal bike path. There's not a lot of elevation right here, so I didn't have a lot of hills to go over, so I had basically ideal conditions, mostly flat, closed bike path, things like that. But I was able to get at 20 mile an hour max speed, just going full blast the whole way, unless I passed a jogger or somebody. I got over 49 miles, not quite 50, but over 49 miles, and that's only 10 miles shy of the max range of 60. Now, what that tells me is had I used PAS 2, 3, 4 for the majority of the time, like most people do with their e-bikes anyway, I would have not only definitely seen 60 miles an hour, but I probably could have exceeded it. That's just a guess on my part, but getting such good numbers on full blast PAS level 5 just leads me to believe you could definitely hit that 60 mile number without much issues, unless you live in an area with a lot of hills or you're a heavier rider. Those kind of play into that as well. Other than that, very solid range numbers. The motor is very quiet. You do hear it from time to time when you're starting to accelerate or things like that, but at the end of the day, it's a quiet motor and a really nice system that's got a lot of flexibility and customization for you to kind of ride at a pace that you want and learn at a pace that makes you feel more comfortable as you grow into the bike. All right, so let's talk about components and drivetrain, things like that. So it is a 7-speed system. So we've got a 7-speed Shimano back here. It's a Shimano tourney rear derailleur, and that's mated to a 40-tooth chainring up front with an 11 to 28 cassette in the rear, giving you plenty of range to work with hills. And then you've got that really punchy motor and 90 newton meters of torque. So really, whether you're on flats, rolling hills, or even steep inclines, Velotric states that this can handle going up a 15% grade without any issues, which is a really steep hill. So if it can handle 15% hills, it's going to handle the rolling hills and flats in your area with no problem, especially when you have that gear range to kind of gear down when you need, gear back up when you want. Nice setup for this bike. Now, in terms of the braking power, we do have hydraulic disc brakes. They are 2-piston calipers, and the levers up top have adjustable reaches and a parking brake feature. So you can set the parking brake on both the front and both rear wheel tires. And on a trike, that's pretty important. You can't just put a kickstand on a trike, because when all 3 wheels are on the ground, it doesn't lean into a kickstand. It's just going to roll with whatever the gradient of the ground is. So if there's any kind of curve to the ground, the bike's just going to roll down it. So having a parking brake on a trike seems like a must, although not everybody does it, but you get them on all 3 wheels here, which is a nice setup. Now, the rotors are one rotor up front, 180 millimeters, 2.3 millimeters thick, so a little bit thicker. And then in the rear, the same thing, 180 millimeter, 2.3 millimeters thick, but it applies braking power to both rear wheels. So you have one caliper braking both rear wheels. And you'll see when we go on a ride, no problems braking this. Would I like to see 4 pistons? Sure, but at the end of the day, this stops just fine. Now, when it comes to the saddle here, there's something to talk about. So we've seen backrest saddles on trikes many times. It's nothing new, so there's nothing new about the idea or the concept of a backrest on a trike. But what makes this very different, and I think really better in my opinion, is the majority that we get, actually everyone I've gotten so far, has a fixed position backrest. So you can adjust it north to south. You can move this up and down with this little handrail here. You can loosen it, slide it up and down, and you're good to go. And you can find what works for you, where you want that positioned on your back for what feels comfortable for you. But you couldn't previously, or at least the ones I've always gotten, you couldn't move this part forward or backward. And depending on your arm reach, if you want to make this fit better, depending on your comfort, maybe you want to lean back a little bit while you're riding, or maybe you want to sit up nice and close to it, it lets you figure that out, because you can actually loosen the seat post and tilt the whole seat. So you can tilt back, tilt forward. You can bring the seat back part forward and backward, and the seat back pad you can raise up and down. So tons of flexibility here, plus that 15 inches of adjustment. Just a really nice setup for the seat that lets you get actually comfortable on a trike, which is not always the case. Now up front, we have a 80 millimeter suspension fork. It's a coil spring made by CGO. It's got a lockout and preload feature. So if I was to lock it out, that will prevent it from, wrong way. There you go. I can lock it out and prevent it from squishing down like when we tie it down in a truck. But when you want to use it, you can just unlock it and you have that there. Now it has nice 32 millimeter stanchions on it that are also black like the rest of it. Looks nicer than the typical chrome stanchions that just look a little bit cheaper. And then up top here, we have the cockpit area. So first things first is all of our controls coming off of the brake levers, things like the engine cutoff or the motor cutoff sensors. So as a safety procedure or precaution, when you touch this brake, it sends a signal to the motor to kick off no matter what's going on, just for safety reasons. So if you, in a panic, grab it, it'll kill the motor, which is nice. Then you have your display buttons, your throttle on this left side, They did include rear view mirrors on both ends of the handlebar. You have a bell here, and you also have a pretty aggressive, loud horn. Now, that horn is really good if you really need to get people's attention, but if you sneak up behind somebody and you hit it, you might startle them, so I'd say maybe use the bell for softer stuff. But in a pinch, you've got a horn that's almost as loud as a car's horn, which is kind of cool as well. Both ends have ergonomic hydraulic rubber platform grips that are lock-on and stay in place, and then you have your 7-speed Shimano shifter with a window here to know what gear you're in. Now, in the center is this 3.5-inch LCD color display. Let's take a closer look at this because it's got a lot of features in it. And we'll also look at the Velotric app that goes with this bike that has also a lot of features. All right, so this is the Velotric LCD full color display. It's about 3.5 inches wide. And I like that it's in this horizontal, wider configuration for a few reasons. One being you can put a lot of data in here that's not going to be scrunched up and tight together, so you can see it at a glance, but it's not so confusing because it's mushed up to each other. And then on top of that, you have bigger fonts. So it's easier to see your speeds, easier to see the numbers down here, easier to see your pedal assist numbers, not a tiny screen where you're trying to squint and figure it out. Now, this is the basic home screen. I'll go over everything on it. Right in the top left, we have our battery bar indicator and a 5-bar system. So I just tell myself each bar represents about 20% of the power. So you lose 1 bar, you're down to 80%. 2 bars is gone, 60%. And that's just kind of how I figure it in my head. Now on the right is just Velotric branding. In the middle left is going to be the headlight indicator. So if I hold the PAS up button, turns on the headlight, you see the indicator turn on. Hold it again, it turns it off. Below that's going to be the horn button, which only happens when you tap the horn. It's a pretty loud horn, but you'll see this light up when I do it. So as you can see, that just lights up intermittently while you're using the horn. In the center is going to be the speed in miles an hour, the current speed, but you can always change that to kilometers if you want to, and I'll show you how to do that in the menu. Far right middle is going to be your pedal assist mode you're in. Right now it's off, but as we go through the different modes of pedal assist, you can see that change with a color indicator. And then below that's going to be the current sensor we're using. So again, this bike comes with a cadence sensor and a torque sensor. It's currently in torque sensor mode. When we go into settings, I'll show you how to change that. And when I back out, you'll see that that will say cadence when we come back out. Now down on the bottom is going to be scrolling data screens that have quite a few metrics that they track. So the basics right here are going to be our odometer. We have about almost 100 miles on here and the total time right under 8 hours ridden on the bike. But if I tap the menu button, we get a new data screen that says motor temp 69, controller temp 75. Tapping it again gives us trip distance and trip time. Tapping it again, you get average speed and max speed. And then one more will give you calories burned and CO2 estimated saved based on using an e-bike over a car. But then tapping that again, you go back to your basic odometer and total time on the bike. Now let's jump into the menu. You hold the M button for menu and it'll take you to the menu screen. One thing I appreciate about Velotric's menus is that they're in plain English. There's no codes or icons you have to look up and figure out what they mean. Everything is just written in a normal, easy to understand way. So first things first, you see beginner mode. This is where I talked about you can limit it to 8 miles an hour if you're new to it and want to take your time. Or you can switch it between beginner mode or standard mode. And you just do that by hitting the over button, or excuse me, the M button, and it'll take you to beginner mode off. But if I click over, it'll turn it on. I'm gonna leave it off for now. And it just says basically that turning off beginner mode will increase speed and add PAS options. Make sure you're skilled in riding the triker and cautious with turns. So again, just a reminder to just take it easy while you do this because it is a trike and there's a tipping hazard at higher speeds. Here you can change the speed limit. So if we go into here, you can do anywhere between 8 and 20 miles an hour. So beginner mode takes you to 8 and this takes you to 8 to 20. So you can have the full range just depending on how you want to set it up for yourself. So I'll bump this up to 20 and then I'll hit M and that will save it. Now if I go down, I can do the same thing with the throttle, go to 20, hit M and that will save that. And then we can back out. So the next one's going to be sensor swap. So really, if you're riding down the road and you say, okay, I'm using a torque sensor, I get it. Let me see how the cadence sensor feels. You just go into this menu, you're going to hit the M button, and you can pick that easy between torque and cadence. I'm going to leave it on cadence so we can see that changed when we come back out. It's another warning. We're going to confirm. Down here, you can clear your trip data if you want to. You can adjust screen brightness, which right now it's on the brightest setting. You can change the rear light mode to a couple of different display options. Right now it's steady on the rear light when you're riding, so the tail light's on, and when I brake, it highlights with a flashing, so it kind of gets brighter and flashes. But if I wanted to change it to a different mode, I could have it to where it's always flashing when I'm riding, and then it just gets brighter when I brake. Or I could do it's steadily on when I'm riding and only gets enhanced when I brake. So really, you have a few options. I like the one over here, where number 3, where you can keep it on steadily and it'll enhance and flash just to catch people's attention if I'm braking with a car behind me. So I'll save that the way it is. And we'll back out of this one. Oh, I held it too long. Let me one more time, go back in. All right, so we were at rear light mode. Now, auto light will basically just let you determine if the headlight is turned on automatically based on the ambient light outside. That's auto mode. It'll turn on and off based on how bright it is outside. Or you can put it not into auto mode and just toggle it on or off with the plus symbol on your pedal assist control pad. Now, this is another similar feature. This will just determine how long the bike takes to power off when you walk away or go to sleep. If we go into here, you can see it's set to 5 minutes, but we could set it much higher, all the way up to an hour if we wanted. Totally your preference, your call on how you want to do that. I'll put it at 5 minutes, leave it there. All right, so next we have throttle limited. Now, if you go in here, it'll let you pick either torque limited or cadence limited. And that basically says when you're in torque sensor, you can limit the throttle, or if you're in cadence sensor, you can limit the throttle. Here is cruise control. You can turn that on or off as well, where you can set a speed while you're riding. We have turn signal click. Right now, if we're riding the bike and we decide to make a turn and I use the turn signal, you'll hear that audible sound. Some people like that because it's an audible reminder to turn it off when you're done turning, because they don't automatically. And some people don't. So if you don't like it, you can go in there and make that adjustment yourself. You go down to the turn signal click, go in here, and you can turn that. Right now it's on, but you could turn it off if you want, if that was kind of annoying to you. Here you can toggle the horn on or off, because some people don't want that button being hit. We'll turn that off for now. And you still have your bell mounted on the handlebar as well. And then I'll jump back in here. And we'll go to this last ones. Connect to app. This is where you're going to hold up your phone, scan the QR code when you have the Velotric app open, and it's going to pair your trike to the app. Now let's back out, because I think we're about to take a look at that now and make sure there's nothing less. Oh, you can do Find My. This is where you can look for your Apple Find My AirTag that's in the bike that will let you GPS track it in the event it's taken, which is a really nice security feature. And then here you can set units between things like mile an hour and kilometer per hour. And then here you can mess with the sensor for calibration. I generally don't mess with that unless service is telling me to fix something, but I've never had any issues, so I've not messed with it at all. And then here you can get your version information for your display and your controller. And that takes us through everything in the advanced menus and back to the home screen. And as you can see over here on the right, that now says cadence sensor because we made that change in the menus. But let's take a closer look at the app now and show you kind of how that interfaces with the display, your phone, and what features it has. All right, so once you pair your Velotric app to the Triker using that QR code on the display that I just showed you, it takes you to the home screen here. And it's a pretty straightforward app. And frankly, most things that we did in the display, we can also do in the app. But the one thing we can't do in the display that we can do with the app is do our GPS ride tracking. So when you hit start, it'll just give your location. And then you can use this even as a larger display should you want to. But I'm going to go ahead and stop that and hold to stop because we're not going to go on a ride right now. It'll just give you a warning that says, hey, you went less than 100 meters, so we didn't record this ride. Sounds good to me. Now we'll go into the bike settings. So here you can go into the settings, and this is a lot of the same things we have in the display. So up top, we can just toggle on beginner mode that limits it to 8 miles an hour. Screen brightness on a scale of 5, or auto mode. Speed limit anywhere from that 8 to 20. Auto power off time. Auto light, the auto headlight based on ambient outside lighting. Cruise control on or off. Throttle limited, either in torque mode or cadence mode. And turn signal click, that audible sound, we can turn that off and on here in the app too. You can switch between cadence or torque sensor in the app, another just on-the-go thing you can do. And you can change units from miles per hour to kilometers per hour. Now, if we go down one more, we have firmware update. And this is a beauty of having a bike with app connectivity, is that the brands, when they find out maybe some sort of optimization or maybe an issue they want to fix with the software on any part of the bike, like the display, the controller, they can forward it to your phone, and your phone will automatically download it and connect it to the bike and install it for you. So you don't have to take it in for service or have to deal with anything like that should they roll out some updates to improve the experience of the bike. Now down here you can unpair when you want to sell the bike, but if you unpair you won't be able to repair until you go back through the QR code again. So I'm going to leave that paired. And then if you go down, this home screen here puts an automatic picture of your bike up when you pair it. It's got the odometer, the battery percentage remaining, the name that I named it. That toggle switch will let you toggle between a different bike. And then up in the top right is just your account profile where you can, change your contact info or whatever settings you have for the account. All that's just basic user profile information. But other than that, that tracks everything in the app. So basically everything you got in the display, but you do have your GPS ride tracking if you want to use that as well. So all in all, this app has been one of the better apps from all the e-bike companies. They seem to stay on top of it, gets consistent updates, and I've never had it crash or give me problems. So it's been a good setup all around. All right, we're currently riding the new Velotric Triker. And I usually talk about first thing you feel as far as like ride quality and comfort and the frame geometry when you get on these, on any e-bike. I kind of just discuss how it feels. And if I was to do that with this one, it's surprising. And not because it's comfortable. I think we all kind of expect that. Three-wheeler, you're seated, nice relaxed position. But the plague of many three-wheel e-bikes is they have fixed position backrests. So they might be able to go up and down as far as where the pad goes along your spine, up or down, but you can't usually move them further out or further back in, allowing you to kind of just find a more comfortable fit. Like this one actually was able to pull out in the back, and that allowed me to kind of sit back a little bit, be more relaxed, instead of being stuck permanently upright and stiff, like a very 90-degree upright. Now the great thing about having that adjustability is you can always change it back to, I can loosen it, move it back forward, tighten it back up, and it'll give me, that 90-degree seated up position that I might want. But in the event that I want to be more relaxed, I can just move it back like I've got it now. Anyway, I digress. That's probably a lot of talking about the backrest, but it's a small detail that goes a really long way in comfort on day-to-day rides. This trike is already more comfort than probably any other one I've ridden, not because they did anything super technical or interesting with the engineering. They just added the ability to slide that backrest forward and back. Other than that, obviously a very comfortable ride, but let's talk about the motor. So right now, I've got it kind of unlocked or at class 2 max, which is 20 miles an hour for throttle and the pedal assist on this, which is really fast on a trike. Let me just kind of stop here. We get to wait till it gets a little flatter up front there. But I'll stop and I'll use the throttle to show you how quick you can get to 20 miles an hour on a trike. All right, so nobody behind me. I'm just gonna stop. And then I got two speedometers here. This one's GPS based on my app, and this one is the logic based on current speed, wheel size, and all that. But let's just go 3, 2, 1. And so this is full throttle, class. We're already at 15, 18, 20. And I don't even like turning a little bit at that speed because on a trike it's a quick way to fall. But nonetheless, it's fast, really punchy. Now, if you don't have a load with you, like no kids, no pets, no groceries, no nothing, it's just your body weight in here, and you probably would never need that full 20 miles an hour, but you've got it if you want it. I think if I owned it, I would wait for the days that maybe my pets were with me, or I had a haul of groceries in here, or I just had it weighed down with gear and the bike was working harder. Then you could unlock it to that 20 miles an hour like that, where that extra power may not take you up to 20 as fast, but it'll give you plenty of usable power at the lower speeds with a heavier load. But let me show you the other mode they have on here called beginner mode, which is really cool. So I'll go and hold the menu button, go to beginner mode, the first menu item here, and we'll turn that on. So now that's on, we will save it and back out. So now it's in beginner mode. It doesn't let me go past pedal assist level 3. And now when I floor it, it's a lot more reserved. 4 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour, 6, 7, and then it tops out at 8 miles an hour. Now the reason this is nice, this allows you to kind of understand the physics of riding a trike and the weight distribution when you go around corners. Lets you just get really used to how this bike feels before you start increasing that max speed. And you can even do it 1 mile an hour at a time all the way up to 20 when you go back to standard mode. So if you want to keep the speed from 0 to 8 slow, put it in beginner mode. That's whether it's grandkids, you know, maybe you haven't been on a bike in a while and you want to just take it easy while you learn it. That's a perfect mode for that. But let's get out of that and go back into standard mode. I will hold the menu button again. Beginner mode off, save, and then I will confirm that. Make sure it's off. All right, beginner mode off. And then we'll back out. And so now we should have, there we go, we have 5 levels of PAS now. And let me just check to make sure the throttle didn't cap itself back at 14 again when we came back to this. Let's go to speed limit. It did, see, so it reset the speed back to 12 miles an hour because now standard mode is basically from 12 to 20 miles an hour. So we will bump this up to 20. And we can lock it in place there, confirm, back out. And so now we're on torque sensor. And I'm just gonna go ahead and hit this throttle, it's pretty quick. And you can see we just blast right off. So I'm gonna go up this little hill here. I mean, it has no problem going right up that hill quickly. I have the fastest I've ever gone on a trike. And it's kind of cool to have that ability. Just be careful with it. So once we go into this neighborhood, we're gonna turn left. And there's kind of a long climb. It's about 5 to 7%. So not crazy steep, but it's pretty sustained for almost a quarter mile. So let's go hit that for the whole quarter mile and see what kind of speeds we get or how much impact the motor has from it when it goes around that. So we'll go up this road and we'll go up this incline after we do this stop, and we'll see how the motor does holding a sustained incline for about a quarter mile. So I'm just going to do throttle, let the motor do all the work. We're going up the hill right now. I know it doesn't look like a lot on camera, but it's a decent, pretty moderate average hill, I'd say, for most people. But we're already at 20 miles an hour, despite that car making us stop. But let's hit it again. And so we're still going uphill, already up at 18. Still climbing at 20, and so now you can feel it kind of back off that 20 because that's the max. And we're just holding. We're holding 20 miles an hour all the way up this hill. This might be the new king of powerful trikes. It's just holding this no problem the whole way up. It's not dropping any speed. It's actually just pinging itself between 20.3 and 20.5. And I've got 20 on both speedometers here. And it holds this with no issue. So the power is really solid. That 1300 peaking watts, that 90 newton meters of torque, you might hear that, that's the turn signal. You can turn that audible part off if you want and just have a visual cue. I like to leave the audible part on because it reminds me to turn it off. Otherwise, if you don't remember and you have the audio cue off, you'll just be riding around town with a turn signal on. So I'm here in this traffic circle, I'm going around it. I'm not going to go over about 11 miles an hour because you can start to feel that weight distribution move, my body weight to the right. That's where you start to remind yourself, okay, it's a trike, it can tip over easier than a two-wheel bike. But I wait till I'm straight and then I can come out of that and get right back up to speed. So now we'll go left. There's that cue for the turn signal. And then I'll hit it one more time to turn it off. Now let's get going up to speed and check out these brakes. So we have 180 millimeter rotors, 2-piston calipers, hydraulic disc brakes. Pretty common setup for a e-bike. And we'll see how it does at 20 miles an hour to a pretty quick stop here. So I'll go 3, 2, 1. So really nice. I did get a little bit of rotor noise there towards the end as I let off pressure, but it wasn't bad. And you know, you've got a 500-pound max payload. You've got the ability to carry 120 pounds of that in the rear rack, which is really cool. And then just really versatile. So you've got your front headlight, your rear tail lights, brake light feature, and turn signals. So riding this in the city, riding this, you know, in the evenings, you're gonna have visibility and safety with other drivers, which is nice. And the motor is not silent, but it is quiet, if that makes sense. I can hear it when it's doing its job, but for the most part, when I'm going at lower speeds, I don't really notice it. Tires make a little bit of road noise, but again, not loud, just present. And then other than that, I can hear the freewheel, you know, the free hub ratchets clicking through, and that's really it. It's pretty easy to ride. Again, I'm gonna go around this corner, slow down because you can feel your body weight move. That's probably the biggest and most important learning curve on a trike. Other than that, they're really fun and enjoyable to ride. Just got to keep that tipping hazard in your mind when you ride a trike, which, if it concerns you, that's where that beginner mode is just really helpful. So we've been using the torque sensor the whole time. Let's try the sensor swap. Now this is the feature that Velotric puts into all their e-bikes, most of them. They ship them with a cadence sensor and a torque sensor, and then you can just switch mid-ride to see which one you like. And so to show you how that translates, let me get down this little hill in front of us, and then when we're on flat ground, I will show you the acceleration with a torque sensor from a dead stop and show the acceleration with a cadence sensor from a dead stop. And between the two, you can feel how, or you can hopefully at least hear and see how different they are. And just lets you as the owner know what you like better. Most people are asked, do they want a cadence? Do they want a torque? They don't know. So this just gives you both and lets you do, you know, your own homework and figure it out. So I'm gonna go into the menu here. Gonna go to sensor swap. Right now it's on torque. Let's move it over to cadence. We'll save it. Gonna confirm that. And then we'll back out. So now I will pedal with cadence sensor, and about half a turn, it just starts going. There's no like difference. So I'm using less pressure in the pedals, but it's still just speeding right up. We get that even power curve all the way up. Because with a cadence sensor, it detects the cadence of my pedaling. Oh, the pedals are moving, so we're gonna give the motor power, just all power. Versus the torque sensor measures how hard I'm trying and then tries to dynamically apply the power to mimic my effort for a more natural feel. So if we stop now and go back to that torque sensor, I'll show you what I mean. So we'll pause here, go to sensor swap again, back to torque sensor, confirm it, back out. Now I'll start pedaling, and I'm pushing hard because I have it on a heavier gear. I'm in the 7th gear right now, but as I let off and I get less pressure, the trike doesn't keep accelerating like it did in cadence mode. It's gonna go slow with me. Now if I start pushing harder, it starts speeding up. It's trying to listen to what I want based on the feedback I'm putting in the pedals. And for a lot of folks, I think that's the best way to do an e-bike. Give people both, let them figure it out. I don't know how much it costs a difference for manufacturers, but I think it's a really cool feature. But let's go back and talk about this from a mechanic standpoint, from an ownership standpoint, maybe some things that aren't as clearly obvious when you're looking at the product on the website, just to get it home and find out, oh, I wish it had this, or I didn't know it had that, those types of things. All right, so let's talk about the Triker from more of a maintenance and ownership standpoint and less from a review standpoint. So we talk about things in this section that maybe aren't clear when you're on the product page. Maybe you just wouldn't realize it until you got it home and opened the box and said, oh, I didn't know it did that. Or maybe you wouldn't even figure it out until you've put 100 miles on it yourself. Because I've done that already, I picked up on a couple things that I think are worth mentioning, and we'll talk about those now. So let's just start with some of the good, because there's a lot of good on this. One, it's done really well. It's made really well. It's a good build quality, and you can tell. Shimano drivetrain components, so it's going to be easy to get it serviced anywhere you go. Your local bike shops can handle that. Now, specifically, I wanted to point out the trike design. Now, the reason why a trike design is really beneficial for most people don't want to deal with the weight of a rear hub motor, specifically when they have to detach the motor cable. If they get a flat tire, pull the tire off with that heavy motor inside, replace the flat, and then put it back in. With this open wheel design, if I was to get a flat on this rear tire right now, either side, I could simply take my tire spoons, pull out the only one side of the tire, and then I could pull that tube out, put a new tube in, and blow it back up. I would never have to even remove this tire, which is a really nice feature. That's like a toolless flat tire repair on these rear wheels. Now the front wheel, you will need to remove it because it's got to come out of that fork for you to put the new tube in. but nonetheless, no motor on any of the hubs just makes changing a tire a lot easier. And on an e-bike with a hub motor, it can be kind of a big pain to do that. So it's nice to see how just easy it is to work on this. And on that note, everything's accessible. So we have our motor right here, our brake underneath that, the battery, the controller, all of our lighting and turn signals, fork, everything is in an open frame design. There is cable routing, but it only goes down about that 1.5 foot distance of the down tube. And everything else is just open for you to work on, so you don't need to do any kind of bike surgery to get into those deep parts of the frame to work on something or swap something out. Everything is just readily available on the outside of the frame, which is going to save you a lot of headaches, or your bike mechanic a lot of headaches. Now, also on this, I wanted to just give a nod to the adjustability. I kind of touched on it already, but when you have like a 3-way adjustability in the saddle and an adjustable stem, when you have a bike that comes in one size with 1 fit range, that's the best thing you can do for it, is giving it lots of flexibility and dialing in that fit that fits each rider differently, so each person can find something that works for them. Now, in terms of things that I would just caution you about or just say to keep aware of, one is, at the end of the day, it's a 100-pound trike. It's not going to be easy to move by yourself. Definitely don't lift it by yourself. Yes, it folds right here at the hinge, but it's not a true folded half like a standard 2-wheel bike can fold in half. Because it's a trike, only the front half will just fold backwards to the rear wheel just by loosening that hatch right there, and that's the whole process. But it's not a full fold in half like you might be expecting on a more traditional 2-wheel bike. And then the other part of that is you can see the cable, the hydraulic line and the cable shift line cable coming through the frame right up against this chain. And while it doesn't affect it right now, over time, chain bounces and pedaling while the cables start to sag, if they ever start to sag, you might start to get some rub of that cable consistently on that cable housing, and it could eat away at it over time. It's not something I'd be concerned about now, but something I would definitely keep my eye on if I owned the bike. And then one last thing to be aware of, while I did praise the saddle for having the 3-way adjustability, which I still do, there's one nut and bolt to tighten that's not as obvious. So you have your left side, right side bolts you can loosen, so you can make all your adjustments, and you just tighten them up and you would think you're good to go. But if you don't loosen the third one right in the center on the back side, it will kind of pop loose often. And I found that out the hard way, as it would move around while I was riding the bike. So if you do make any adjustments to it where you loosen this up, just make sure you tighten all 3 of the bolts underneath the saddle so you don't have that saddle slipping any positions while you're riding. Other than that, it's got a great paint job. It's done well. It's put together well. It's a fun bike to ride. All right, guys, so there you have it, Velotric Triker. This is Velotric's first electric trike, and like I expected, Velotric usually does a pretty good job, and they did a really good job with this one. Now, you have the 60 miles of range. That seems to be no problem on my end. A very punchy 20-mile-an-hour motor. That's the fastest I've seen on a trike yet. A big 500-pound max capacity payload, and it comes with all the creature comforts like fenders, rear rack, headlights, turn signals, brake lights. It's just ready to go from day one, and then, of course, it's got those gorgeous paint jobs that they do over at Velotric. Now, is it perfect? Of course it's not perfect. It's going to be a little bit more on the pricey side. But at the end of the day, if you want kind of the better end, high-end trike that's got all the features like extra sensor swap between cadence and torque, Apple Find My integration, GPS tracking, there's just a lot that comes with this bike. So while it is more expensive than the other ones on the market, it seems to be bringing more to the table as well. Now, if you have questions about this that I did not answer that you'd like to know before you make up your mind, just drop a comment. I'll get that information back to you personally in the comments. And until the next review, guys, I'll see you out on the trail.